You're tuning in to the Friday night tasting, and welcome to Grenache Day. Happy Grenache Day. Hopefully you all had some Grenache with your lunch, as I think we all did. But tonight's going to be a bit different than our normal program, so we're going to stretch ourselves in technology and have 4 people on tonight, as presumably you know, which is super, super exciting for me. I'm scared of the technology, but I'm excited to speak to people that I've done these Friday night things with before, that I have great respect and I'm influenced by and impressed by. Of course, Bob Lindquist, who's been a star of the Rhone world. That's not the right term. Just a leader in everything Rhone for so many years, and I've known him a long time. Spent more time speaking to him over Facebook on the internet one-on-one than probably in real life, but super excited to have him back again. Angela Osborne, tribute to Grace. Excited for her. Bob's going to pour his Grenache. Angela's going to pour a Grenache and also a sparkling, which we'll finish this with. And then hopefully Jessica. We're having trouble finding Jessica, getting her online, but hopefully she'll be in too, from Story of Soil, doing Carbonic Grenache, which we had billed as being second. But if she can't jump in, then we'll just go straight to Angela's tribute to Grace. We're going to start with Tablas Creek Grenache Blanc. And of course, we all love Grenache. It's a great and varied grape, and it's been a quest of mine in the last couple of years to figure out what style I think is the one that I like the best. And all that has served to do really is confuse me more and to realize that there's many different styles that I like and some that I don't love so much, all the way from rosé to sparkling Grenache Blanc, the carbonics, just an incredible and versatile grape. I mean, I think Bob will know more than I about this perhaps, and perhaps Bob will speak to this, but I think its history is out of Spain, as so many things are, and just moved its way through Europe and over here. And I think in the last 20 years, it's really seen, probably in the last 10 years, it's seen a massive renaissance here as a very high quality product. And it's just getting stronger and stronger with the likes of Angela and Jessica, no offense, Bob, coming in and doing new and different stuff with the styles that I hadn't seen before. So if our technological wizard Ian can bring the rest of you in, then there's Jessica. She's here. Excellent.
All right.
Hey, guys. Whoa, Angela's closer now.
I am. How did you do that, Ian?
So where's Jessica? Should we bump straight to, let's do the Grenache Blanc then. Hey, guys, are you having a good Grenache day?
Beautiful Grenache day, thank you. Where's my Grenache?
Is this your first sip of Grenache of the day there, people? I know it's not Bob because he sent me a annoying email earlier showing me the array of what he's been drinking. Angela, you'd like this. Bob sent me some hate mail earlier. His lunch wines was a vertical of Rias from, I think, 96 to 2000.
Stop it. That's not fair. That's not fair.
I just had a bottle of Lindquist and thought I was doing well, but
well, it coincidentally, I've been organizing my cellar recently, and I came across. I knew I had some Rias in the cellar, and Jim Clendenin has some Rias in the cellar, and we do these winery lunches during harvest, and it just seemed like the perfect day to with our staff to share a little vertical of Rias. So we did 1992 and then 96 through 2000, and
it's hard. It's hard down there, isn't it?
They were all showing beautifully. It was an amazing lineup. They were all, and had several people ask me what was my favorite. There's no answer to that because they were all individually interesting in their own way.
It's good to be in that situation. I will say that, and I don't know, Angela will remember, but Bob will. We had the wine of lunch for us today, and we had a few. Was a 2016 Kunin, which was Seth's last vintage. I was told my nephew is now a winemaker down there, Lucas, and I texted him to say what a great bottle. He told me it's Seth's last vintage, and it was a beautiful bottle of wine. I think it was the Pop Star.
there's a big emotional attachment to drinking a bottle like that. That's for sure.
There is, and it was great on a day like today.
Yeah.
Well, Grenache Blanc. So Tablas Creek Grenache Blanc. It was a new thing to the state, I believe, when Tablas brought it in. And I think a big surprise to French and American partners alike how well it's done in this place on this soil. I see it as the greatest expression of terroir off our property. It just really feels the limestone to me, and it's always a beautiful wine. And I actually had some of this with lunch too, the 19, which I hadn't had since we bottled it, and it's tasting beautifully to me. And I love the texture and the little tannicness that Grenache Blanc has.
How do you make this, Neil? What's your approach to the
So we whole cluster to the press. Sometimes settled, sometimes not. But as with all the wines, it's all native yeasts and mallows, and it will be in a combination of fermentation and aging in a foudre, neutral foudre, 1,200-gallon French oak barrel, if you will, some stainless steel and pungents. That would be our general regime. And then when we get to the blending table, we'll take in a portion of each to build the wine itself. So I really like the large format wood. Whoa. Oh, there she is. Hey, Jessica, you hear us?
I can't hear anything.
It's gorgeous now.
I think this is showing well. It shows the grape, a little bit of citrus and apples, stuff that I like in our Grenache Blanc. It's just a very pretty wine, and it has some great structure to it, which is good. And I'm told it's like was one of the widest planted whites in France, but it never gets any label credit for whatever reason.
Right.
And certainly making a push here, rightfully so. Do you have any Grenache in the ground? Grenache Blanc in the ground?
I cannot hear anything.
RSB?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't. But Jim Clendenin has some Grenache Variety that he grows at a place called Rhone, Los Alamos.
Can you hear me?
We had two different vintages.
I can hear you, yeah.
Of Grenache Variety today with our lunch as well. It's a lot of fun.
So Grenache Variety being rosé-like, I would assume.
Yeah, but we whole cluster press it, or I should say Jim whole cluster press it and makes it as a white wine. And it does have just the slightest hint of kind of like Pinot Gris. Pinot Gris that's made as a white, but it has that just slightest hint of pink to it. Yeah, really.
I think there may be more Grenache Gris planted around than we know. It's going under the name of Grenache Noir.
That's right.
See a lot of that for our rosé program coming in the door. And growers that have planted Grenache that doesn't get red. I mean, it'd be tough for them if there wasn't rosé in the world. Mm-hmm. Ooh, Angela, are you hearing us?
Yeah, you sound loud and clear. Can you hear me?
We haven't said anything yet, so no, you should pipe in here.
I've just been listening to your wisdoms, Neil, with gratitude.
Yeah. Well, speak up and tell us what you think.
Angela,
Of this wine?
Yeah, you can start there.
No, I was going to say, I assume that you make Grenache Blanc, Angela.
Yes, so I started making it in 2018. We just bottled our 19, I think 2 weeks ago. We get ours from a vineyard here in Los Alamos called Thompson, which is own-rooted, planted on flint. Quite different, like texturally to this, but definitely I'm getting to know Grenache Blanc. I love a lot of the old wine Spanish whites, but to see a single varietal here, I still don't believe it's that common. But I love them, and this is delicious. It makes me want paella,
Well, yeah, I would enjoy a bit of that also, I think, a bit of paella. What is the Spanish, just struck in my head, where they say it's kind of the home of Grenache Blanc? There's a Spanish region. Do we know that? I do, but it's slipped my...
Well, I know it. I know they grow it in Rioja.
Yeah.
Because I've had white Rioja that's made, from primarily Grenache Blanc. But I'm guessing that Grenache Blanc is grown in quite a few different areas.
Yeah, there's a higher elevation spot. It was actually Josh Reynolds who told me about it, and I haven't had a bottle, but it's a higher elevation Grenache Blanc, and I'll think of it by the end of this session. I'll get it to you, but I would imagine that would be fun to go investigate some old vine Grenache Blanc in Spain. It's got to be a cool thing.
And they grow it. In one of the areas they probably grow it is along the Mediterranean coast, north of Barcelona.
Well, yeah, I think again,
in the very southern part of France, where France and Spain meet there, and it makes a wonderful wine there.
Someone, John Peacock, just said Aragon is the original name of Grenache, and I think Aragon was like a kingdom, and that's where Grenache originally came from, right? And it spread. It was in like Sicily or Sardinia and Italy. So yeah, it came out of Spain. Again, it seems to sneak around. It's everywhere, but you never really hear of it by itself, which is a bit of a shame because the way it displays for us, it very much deserves to be a single varietal.
For sure.
Yeah, it's yummy.
All right. Well, being as we don't seem to have Jessica just at the moment, let's move on to Angela's. Whoop! There it is. Shake Ridge.
All right.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm just going to let you go, Angela, and talk about this and tell us what it is and why it is and who you are and why you are and what you are and Grenache and wherever you want to go.
Okay, thank you. So this is the 2016 Shake Ridge Ranch, which is a vineyard up in the Sierra Foothills. I don't know if that really shows in focus, but it's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It's the 6th vintage we've made from the site. It sits in Amador County in a beautiful little town called Creek. And my husband and I lived there the vintage of 2011. We worked sort of a vineyard internship for Anne. That was also the first year these vines bore fruit. We've worked with this block from its first fruit, which is a really amazing honor. We have 33 rows planted to 362 clone, which is my favorite clone of Grenache. And whenever I can find it, I tend to jump. I think there's now 14 different single vineyard Grenaches in the Grace House, which I'm very honored by. And 5 of those are 362 clone. So the ONTAV description of this clone is a little bit less enticing than maybe my own. They describe it as medium acid, medium body, medium sweetness, medium yield. And I think it's more like a woman riding a horse bareback without shoes on, holding an incense stick. And this is the perfect expression of kind of that analogy. It's very feminine, it's very wild.
I don't think the blokes from ONTAV were going to write that.
I think they should. I don't know, it'd be a bit more interesting than all those mediums.
Well, they probably had lab coats on and stuff. So, and I always think with the ONTAV stuff, they write these descriptors, and I wonder where do those come from? I mean, what soil, what region were they writing about? Because a clone of Grenache planted at Shake Ridge, and the same thing planted at Tablas Creek, and the same thing planted on Bob's Slide Hill, going to display very different character, I would say.
Yeah, completely. They identify this selection as coming from the Languedoc-Roussillon, which I personally have not yet stepped foot on. You might be able to speak to that, Neil.
No, not so much. I mean, I've been down there, but I don't know Grenache. But it kind of speaks again to my dilemma of trying to pigeonhole Grenache is not an easy thing to do because it's so versatile. Just what the wines we taste tonight, I think, and not by accident, they're a great view of how varied Grenache can be, what different people can do with it. I mean, the fact that you're making 14 different Grenaches and we would assume they all don't taste the same would show that's not an easy thing to do with most grape varieties. Making 14 different cabs will be a tough chew for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. It didn't start off that way. I started the label in 2007 with one 2-ton dream that I moved to America for. That was from fruit northeast of Santa Barbara, up in the Santa Barbara Highlands vineyard. That's a different clonal selection. And it's slowly expanded to 14. I think I'm good. I think 14's enough, but always open.
There could be more.
It could be. Could be.
What about other varieties? I know you make a Graciano. I actually had it the other night.
That was a little sacred find also from Shakeridge. That was for my father's mother, who always asked when I was going to make a wine for her. And when I learned about Graciano, I went back to the little apple farm that we were living in Shakeridge and typed Graciano into Google. And the first thing that came up was that it was Spanish for grace. And I went, okay, there is my dear G-Funks wine. I've only made it 2 vintages. Apparently in Spain, they say Graciano, Gracias no, because it's so hard to ripen, and lots of problematic issues during the growing season. So from 2011 to now, we've made it twice, but we've asked for it every year. And we made 23 cases, so it wasn't a huge amount, but lots of love in there. But apart from that one, it's just Grenache, and Grenache Blanc, and Rosé of Grenache, and a Blanc de Noirs of Grenache. Yeah, lots of Grenache love.
Graciano is a funny one. You say it's hard to ripen, but in Paso Robles, it was planted largely by accident. People think it was Monastrell, and it really does very well here as a grape variety. It ripens well, holds great acid. You know, some people pulled it out and replanted with the Mourvedre they wanted, but a lot of people have continued on with it, and they're loving it and feel like it's actually a great grape for this region, which is fantastic. You know, there's so many grapes out there, and finding the right ones for our regions are going to take generations for sure, right? So Graciano accidentally stumbling upon Paso Robles has been a good thing.
Yeah, I don't try this.
As we've seen the same thing for sure at Tablas, not Rhone varieties, but Tannat and Vermentino were not things we really anticipated, and they just love the region. I mean, Vermentino in particular for me is just like, you're going to plant a white grape up here, Grenache Blanc Vermentino would be my first 2 calls for sure. Roussan's great, but it's hard work. You know, if you want an easy life, you go with Vermentino. If you want hard work, go with Roussan. You'll get something great eventually.
What about Mark?
Where's Bob? You got something to say there, Mr. Lindquist?
There we are.
There he is.
I was just going to say, as you know, we have such a long growing season in our part of California that we can grow all these different grape varieties and actually get them ripe. We're, in our part of Santa Barbara County and southern San Luis Obispo County, we're really best known for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and they ripen properly because we have this long, cool summer that, this summer, setting aside this summer, we generally have a long, cool summer. And so those grape varieties ripen properly and make great wine, in this area. But then some of our best weather is September, October. And so these later ripening varieties, have a lot of hang time, and they ripen properly every year. And it's pretty amazing and pretty unique, actually, in the world of fine wine.
When you're saying this region, where are you? Because not everyone knows where you are, Paul.
Well, I'm talking kind of specifically about Santa Barbara County and southern San Luis Obispo County, but you can include Paso Robles in there as well. You have quite a bit more heat in Paso Robles, but you have the same long growing season that we have in just south of where you are. You have a warmer summer obviously than we have, and you probably have a cooler October than we have down here. So the result is a really long growing season that can ripen properly a lot of different grape varieties.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we didn't have the cold nights that we do here, it would be a very different picture here in Paso Robles. We wouldn't be sitting here drinking Grenache Blanc. I don't think it would be a whole different story. So thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for the Pacific Ocean. Hopefully that keeps going. I see Jessica back. Are you with us now? Can you hear us?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Well, welcome to the conversation. We skipped over your wine, and we'll go to it next. How about that? Bring you right in. We're just chatting away here. I mean, there's no great format here because I'm not very good at strict formats. But so Andrew's wine, great. Everybody should get some. Go to the tasting room, grab some. And let's move to Jessica, and let's bring Jessica up and tell us about your wine, your winery, and whatever you want to talk about. Grenache Day.
Okay.
The wonders of Los Olivos.
So actually, I started mostly with Pinot Noir and Syrah. And a few years back, I added Slide Hill, which is the vineyard that, first of all, one of my big inspirations of my life for Syrah and Grenache is Bob Lindquist and his vineyard.
Does he make you nervous being on the computer with you?
A little bit.
He makes me nervous.
Was when I on with you a few weeks back too. So, if I stumble, I'm here. But in all honesty, my uncle introduced me to Bob's wines. Gary Burke introduced me to Bob's wines a number of years back, and I fell in love with the wines, especially the Grenache. And that vineyard actually is wonderful for Rhone varietals. And so that was the first vineyard that I started working with about 4 years ago, just one Grenache. I knew definitely a lot more about Pinot, so that was kind of my venture into it. I've been working with it since. And then last year, I got a little bit of the Grenache bug, a little bit more deeply into the heart, and started investigating more. Obviously, I love Angela's wines. Went in there, tasted some of her fabulous wines, and so on and so forth. And so last year, I actually worked with 3 Grenache vineyards. And because I decided to work with 3, I decided to do each Grenache differently, as far as Christie and Wise out in the Santa Rita Hills, way west. I kind of did traditionally. Slide Hill Grenache, I did 50% whole cluster, and I don't do any punch downs on that. And then I thought, well, what if I did a carbonic as well, to kind of sidestep a little bit of the tannin. I feel like tannins in Grenache is where where I love or not a Grenache, and I try to kind of manage those tannins, and I do that through the fermentation process with no punch downs, and with this carbonic. So this was a fun Stoltman vineyard. Love Stoltman family, and the site really wonderful. So I just decided to try carbonic. I love their So Fresh line and all their kind of funky, fun, youthful wines, and so that's why I decided to do this one carbonic.
Can you explain, Angela? Can you explain for those of us or those people out there that aren't familiar what the term carbonic means? When you say you're making Grenache carbonic, what do you mean by that?
So carbonic is a fermentation. So traditional fermentation would be open top. Yeast eats sugar, converts it into alcohol and CO2. The CO2 escapes into the atmosphere. With carbonic, it's an enclosed, it's a completely environment. It becomes yeast, no oxygen, and so the grapes essentially ferment from the inside out, with tremendous amounts of CO2 present, which doesn't escape. And so it's just a different fermentation process.
And what does it bring, do you think?
I find carbonic wines to be incredibly energetic. And I know that that's kind of a strange word when it comes to wine, but there's this livelihood, this tension, this brightness. Also, aromatics become different. You get a little more of that bubblegum side to fermentation, which I love. Some people either love it or don't. And carbonic really, in my opinion, is to be enjoyed for the youthfulness of a wine. So we do our Gamay well, so we bottle it young. So we really capture the youthfulness of this wine, which is carbonic. So
is that to say you don't think a carbonically fermented wine will age as well as a regular fermentation?
no, I didn't mean that. What I meant was, for me, carbonic wines purpose and what I love about, like, let's just say Beaujolais, when I go out and I seek Beaujolais or I seek a carbonic wine, the Stoltman, So Fresh line, things like that, I'm looking for the youthfulness. I'm looking for the fun and the energy and the brightness. I'm not looking for an aged wine when I look for a carbonic or when I drink Beaujolais like that. So it really is the livelihood and the brightness and the fun side of the wine that I look for with carbonic.
But it can hold up over time, I would imagine, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I find that, you start with good grapes, the structure's there, the acid's there, all the building blocks are there properly, that it is going to carry through for years to come, for certain.
It's super cool. I love this wine. My two boys are fermenting a Low Madrone carbonic Sanso this year, which I'm scratching my head watching this all go down, but I'm really excited about it because I've loved what you've done with this wine and a bunch of other people that are playing with more of this. And I've played with it in the past, but not so seriously. And I think it's really cool. I love the like you said, the tension that it brings. I think is really pretty and alive.
Thank you.
Let's bring the rest in, Ian, if we can, so we can have a chat here. Bob, done a lot of carbonic?
I'm sorry?
You done a lot of carbonic fermentation?
I have not, but I've been around it, and Jim Clendenin has experimented with carbonic, and and then I drink, I love good Beaujolais. So not that all Beaujolais is carbonically fermented, but many of them are, and they do, as long as they have good balance and structure. One of the charms, though, and I think Jessica pointed this out, is the youthfulness and the youthful energy that carbonic brings. And I think when you age a wine like this, it's kind of like aging Viognier. One of the charms of Viognier is its youthful exuberance and fresh, floral character. And sure, it has the structure to age well, but it becomes a completely different kind of wine after it ages for a while. And I think it loses, some of the appeal that it was originally intended for, aging wines like this.
So then where does it go, though? You would think with all the CO2 involved, it would be age-worthy and it would stay fresh for a long time. And
for sure. And I'm just saying, I think that with age, though, you lose that youthful exuberance and the energy that you have when it's young. And it becomes a different wine, and then it becomes kind of a preference, and there's no right or wrong answer to any of that. But
no, I'm not sure that I've had aged carbonically made wines, and I'm wondering what direction they go in once they have some years on them. If they turn into more of a normal style of fermentation in flavor, or where does that go? I'm not sure. I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I definitely think that the mouthfeel, the mouthfeel to me is changed from when I first bought it back in April substantially. With sometimes with carbonic, you get that slight from the trapped CO2. And then that sometimes, bigger, it will blow off when you open the bottle. But this is not as delightful on the palate with that effervescence as it was when I bottled it back in April. So that's already changed just from being in the bottle for 6 months as well, and kind of leaning more towards, I guess, Grenache than the carbonic primary fermentation. I love the smell of fermentation. So like the primary notes of what fermentation, those notes are pretty incredible. And so it's less that now than it was when we first bottled it, which is pretty interesting.
Have you ever tracked the dissolved CO2 in the wine as it ages, like see where it starts and how it dissipates? I have not. I'm just curious.
Well, so this particular wine here, I actually have more of it in barrel. So I had so much Grenache last year that I wanted to experiment and play around and see what the effects are on these different ways of, producing Grenache, be it traditional fermentation or carbonic or the in between with the Slide Hill. And so I bottled this super young because I loved a few of the barrels that had that snapshot of primary, bright, energetic wine. And so I actually still have a number of barrels. What's interesting is that the CO2 is still in the barrel, and I have not sulfured those barrels since last spring when they finished secondary fermentation. Checked them most recently, and they didn't need any sulfur, so they're still bright and fresh. And it's kind of fun to see the evolution, not as effervescent or not as primary as this was when we bottled it, but still pretty youthful, if you will.
That's
So
in a pretty cool environment then, right?
Yep.
Angela, come on. You've done some carbonic for sure.
Only once. Last year I did it for the first time under my label, and I did 1 ton of Santa Barbara Highlands. And it was amazing, but it was much more carbonic than it was Santa Barbara Highlands. That's the expression that I enjoy, but I'm not sure if I want to bottle just yet, I would say. But it made a really fun element of what went into the Santa Barbara Highlands vineyard. But in and of itself, it was like, what's the American lolly that everyone compares Grenache to? Jolly Rancher. It smelled like a Jolly Rancher. That's the first time I smelt it in Grenache, was the carbonic Grenache.
How do you know what Jolly Rancher tastes like? You're from New Zealand.
I smelled it out because everyone always says Grenache, it smells just like Jolly Rancher, and I never knew what they were talking about. Now I think maybe carbonic Grenache, or at least mine from the Santa Barbara Highlands, smelled a little bit like a Jolly Rancher. But yes, it doesn't exist in New Zealand.
I've never had a Jolly Rancher.
Do you know what it smells like?
I've never actually met a Jolly Rancher either, for that matter. But no, I do not know what it smells like.
You don't know what you're missing.
My coworkers all use these candy. Jason Haas loves the candy expression. Like, I've never had one of those. I don't know what watermelon Jolly Rancher tastes like.
Yeah.
Just smell it. Just a smell.
Maybe I should go to the candy shop.
It takes me back to my youth.
Yes, exactly. It's too late for me to go back to eating candy, I think. All right. This is beautiful. Beautiful. And I'm excited now for my kids' Sanso project.
And I think a light chill on the wine would be a nice
Oh, totally. Yeah, mine came out of the fridge for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to the Lindquist, the man himself.
All right.
I don't think any of the rest of the three of us on this forum can claim that we have not been inspired and influenced by Bob Lindquist. If you do, you're not telling the truth.
Absolutely.
Well, I've been making Grenache for quite a while, starting in the kind of the mid '90s with fruit from the Alisos vineyard and the Stoltman vineyard in the San Ynez. And right around that same time, I consulted for a winery in Provence in the late '90s that had quite a bit of Grenache planted. They had Grenache Blanc and Grenache Gris, so they had all different variations of Grenache and probably different selections or clones of Grenache, but nobody knew what they were because they had been planted there for a long time, and they weren't really talking about clonal differences as much as they were talking about different sites at Chateau Routas, which is the winery where I was making Grenache in Provence. And then a little bit later, kind of fast forward to the early 2000s, I started working with Grenache from Steve Beckman's vineyard called Parissima Mountain Vineyard, which is in the Ballard Canyon appellation. And gorgeous Grenache, and really, really great site for it. A lot of limestone in the soil, a lot of exposure. Part of the charm of that vineyard is its exposure. It's kind of southern facing slope, that captures a lot of sunshine in the San Ynez Valley area. And so I started working with that for a number of years. And then in the mid-90s, we planted what we call the Sawyer Lindquist Vineyard, which we have recently sold, not that much now. So Brooke Williams, we still call it the Sawyer Lindquist Vineyard because that's what we called it when we planted it. But it goes by both names. And I know Jessica makes a Slide Hill Grenache from that site. And that's when I started working with, kind of true cool climate Grenache. Not that Stoltman and Turismo Mountain weren't cool sites for Grenache. They were relatively cool, but they were quite a bit warmer than the Edna Valley where we had the Sawyer Lindquist Vineyard planted. And what I found from cool climate Grenache is a very different expression than what I was used to from Grenache, a more elegant expression, great acidity, low pH, and just a really pretty elegance to the wines and the fruit that comes from there. Made with about a third whole clusters, fermented very traditionally fermented in small open top fermenters, manual punch down. And then with Grenache, because it is an oxidative variety, I like to put it straight to barrel from the press. In other words, we don't put it from press into tank into barrel. We go just directly into barrel from the press to kind of minimize the amount of oxygen that the wine gets, and then leave it on the leaves the entire time that it's in barrel, in neutral barrels, and then bottle it after about 15, 16 months. This we bottled a little bit early. We bottled it before. We decided to bottle it before the harvest. It was showing really well, and we were out of the 2008. So we thought, well, let's go ahead and bottle the 2009 a little earlier than normal, and it's, I think, showing well already.
So there's a question. There's a lot of really good questions, but I'm so interested in listening to you guys talk. I've been neglecting them, but Richard J. Adams just said, and I think this is perhaps a good question for you, Bob. In my experience, you can see it too, I think, but there you go. Yeah, the Grenaches of France have more garrigue, and the California ones are more fruit and pepper, taste a bit candied, blah, blah, blah. Is that whole cluster, or is that fermenting concrete? What is the pivotal difference between Grenache made in the great regions of France, I guess he's saying, which Gigondas is my homage. I think that's where I see the greatest Grenaches coming from.
Sure. And I think the difference is just the site and probably age of vines also. I mean, there are old vines.
There it is.
Grown, but Grenache was never taken that seriously in California until the last 25, 30 years. It was mostly grown in warmer areas and made as, kind of a regular red wine instead of a fine red wine. And I think really it's been in the last 25, 30 years that it started going in a direction of pursuit of making a fine wine that has the complexity for age worthiness. And I think in time we'll notice, maybe more similarities between the great Grenaches of France and the great Grenaches of California, but we're always going to be different because it's California. We have more sunshine here. We have ostensibly a cooler summer than they have in the southern Rhone, where they really baked in the middle of summer there, and yet in the spring and in the fall in southern Rhone it's quite cold. So it's a very different, more compact growing season. And that's I think Grenache, from what I hear, obviously I wasn't around at the time, but I hear Grenache was more celebrated here in California for the fact that it produced massive amounts of juice in the Central Valley for the big bulk wines, right? I mean, that was its thing in the 50s and 60s. Right. It wasn't about quality. Right. Yeah. No, it was never pursued as a great wine. In fact, I cannot think of anybody who made great Grenache, prior to the 1990s. That's very true. And that was something I've certainly heard the Perens and Robert Haas talk about, was wanting to bring in different clones, because at the time when they came here,
it wasn't necessarily available. And John Alwyn, of course, had probably already started growing some stuff, but both those groups, Alban and Haas Perrin, were seeking the better clones of Grenache rather than the high producing clones, because it will give you a lot of juice if you want to use that clone and irrigate it. I guess that's faded off a little bit now, but
and both those, Neil, were only 30 years ago, or
yeah.
So that's how recent that pursuit was.
I was just a boy when that was happening. This is beautiful. Again, I love this. I mean, I traditional isn't the right term, but after the two previous ones, this is more down the line Grenache, and it's got great balance and structure. It's not overbuilt, which I don't like in Grenache. I mean, my favorite thing, Jessica earlier said tannin is kind of the make or break for her, and I kind of agree. But when Grenache tannins are at their best, I think it's my favorite wine tannin is a great Grenache tannin. That's my feeling on that subject, and I think that's going on here a little bit. Jessica, Angela, chime in.
This is 362 clone, isn't it, Bob?
I'm sorry?
Is this 362 clone?
No, it's Tablas A. So Tablas clone A, which they have several different selections of Tablas. And this is
which may or may not be the same thing.
And
one thing I didn't mention, it also has 20% Syrah in the blend. It's not pure. It's not 100% Grenache.
oh, what else is in the
How much Syrah? What else is in the blend, Bob?
Oh, 20% Syrah
Right.
as well.
Same vineyard site though.
Same vineyard site, yeah. It's a vineyard designated wine, and also Demeter certified biodynamic, which, as you know, it has to be 100%, from that vineyard site, in order to carry that designation.
Oh, on the bottle too, yeah. Yeah, our vineyard is certified biodynamic. We've never done the wine. That's something I keep saying I'm going to talk to you about, because we probably should move in that direction.
It's a that's a slippery slope.
No, we're the masters of certification at Tablas Creek. We just did the ROC thing, and that was a whole nother world.
Right.
Being a guy who's really, really poor at paperwork, I've had to hand that off to other people. I just come up with a great idea. We should get the certification.
One of the,
I think it's beautiful. I love this wine. I had one of these the other night.
One of the issues with winery certification is there are restrictions as to what you can do in winemaking according to Demeter standards. And
like what? Give us some of them.
Like not adding acid would be one of the primary. The amount of SO2 you can add, and the amount of SO2 is a reasonable. It's 100 parts per million total. Which
that's doable.
And that's doable, sure. But it's also, I guess what I don't like about Demeter standards for winery is we're the ones making the wine, and we're the ones who need to make sure that the wine turns out the best that it can be. And if we have to make adjustments to the wine, like acidity, like water, like yeast, if we have a stuck fermentation, all those things that we need to do to ensure making the best wine possible. Because in the end, we have to be able to sell the wine, so we don't want Demeter's not out there selling it for us. So that's one of the issues I have with Demeter. Luckily, where this Grenache is grown and where this vineyard is, it's cool enough that it holds its acidity really well. That said, in 2020 or 2020, we're adding acid to every single wine that we bring in from that vineyard.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to make a under par wine just to be Demeter. That was kind of the interesting thing for us. We were the pilot winery in the ROC thing, which I know you know, but that was kind of interesting for us, and more in the farming practice than anything. And then telling us, well, this is the way you have to farm, and us saying, well, that's not what works here. I mean, you're basing this on what? Who says that that's the right way to farm? I mean, I understand certain parameters, but we have certain things here, gophers being a big one, that they don't have on the East Coast, which is where you're basing a lot of this. So, and they were very good to be a bit flexible with that and listen to our input. And I think the Demeter certification wine is the same thing. It's like, who's making these rules, and have they ever made a bottle of wine? You know, or have they made a bottle of wine in our region or in our situation? And there has to be some flexibility. We do. Last year we made a little bit with no sulfur, and this year we're doing a lot with no sulfur. Syrah a lot. That's actually, I'm hoping, starting to mend any moment. And we bought biodynamic barrels, which I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I bought them because they said they were.
Well, there should be a category.
It's an oak tree, after all. It was around probably a long time before they started certifying.
There should be a Demeter category for wines that are made from Demeter certified biodynamic grapes.
Grapes. That's the thing.
You could then proudly claim on the label, and right now that's not the case.
Which is really the stringent part, anyway. Jessica?
Which I do. I biodynamic really speaks to my heart, and I work with, I think, a total of 5 biodynamic, Slide Hill included, and more down here in Santa Barbara. I just find it, I don't know, I guess mostly as well after that.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit, maybe closer to the mic.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, just that biodynamic seems to be a little bit more for me, something that inspires me, vineyards and farmers that inspire me. Biodynamics, the level of integrity and awareness that goes into biodynamic farming, and I think it's wonderful. If I could work with all biodynamic vineyards, I would. I currently work with about 5, maybe 6 vineyards now that are biodynamic, and I think that there's something pretty special about those vineyards, certainly. So I agree. It'd be kind of rad if we could put that on. I obviously don't own a vineyard, but it'd be rad if we could put that on our bottles for certain.
Yeah, biodynamics is interesting. People always want you to explain it, and people always are intrigued by the cow horn and that stuff. But I think the fundamentals of it are a lot deeper than that. Just the philosophy of how you farm and how you believe you should care for the land is more important to me than the preps, which we do all of those, make them all on site. But there's more to it than that, and I think it's a cool way, and I think you're right. I think it's the attention that people start to pay, and that certainly is how it affected me. I mean, I went into it honestly a little bit skeptical, but then once you get your head around it, it's really a good way to farm. That's all it is. It's quite traditional, apart from the preppy stuff, which is cool and interesting. I don't know that I can fully understand that, but there's lots of things I don't understand. Angela, you got an opinion?
I'm a huge believer. I don't own land either, but that's the ultimate dream, is to have a little piece of earth and farm it that way. I always look at, so the lunar rhythms sort of guide when I pick and when I press and when I bottle. I try not to do anything when the moon is void of course, and the moon is void of course today, and things aren't meant to taste great when the moon is void of course. And this is the third International Grenache Day in a row where the moon's been void of course. It's always also void of course around Halloween, and I want to say around Christmas. So initially I was kind of dogmatic, don't even try wine when the moon's void of course, because everything will taste limited in some way. Drink gin or cider or beer. Champagne doesn't necessarily seem to be so affected, but I find that the moon is void of course. What's the most dominant is a wood character, even more so than when the moon is in an earth sign, which translates to root.
Are you suggesting that cider is less affected by the moon than wine?
I have really enjoyed your cider. I forget the beetroot one, but that, when the moon was white, of course, was amazing.
I don't think cider cares about where the moon is, frankly.
What?
I don't think cider really cares where the moon is. It's
It was
just cider.
fun. I don't know if trapped CO2 carries an energy in it that maybe isn't affected because it's sparkling. So James Milton is sort of my hero from New Zealand, and he introduced me to the philosophies when I was in university. He studied at Geisenheim, so then I decided I really wanted to go to Geisenheim, learn biodynamics there, and I tried to read Steiner's teachings in German, and it's a bit confusing. My German's not perfect, and it's really like cerebral German. But the thing that gets me, and maybe you guys can speak to this, there's a prep made with canine skull. Have you ever worked with that one?
Did you say a prep made with canine skulls?
Yeah.
No.
Like there's the current one, which is sort of the traditional, but then there's a dog brain, for want of it, sorry to be a bit graphic, but I've never heard of anyone using that one. That's the one I kind of got stuck on. The dog was meant to live on the land, and then you use the brain to make compost. Have you heard of that one?
I have not.
Hang on. Yeah, that one didn't fit quite with me, but the other stuff I love.
I think, I mean, I'd like to sit down and chat to all of you on this because I have some good opinion, or good, they're probably terrible opinions, but I have some strong opinions on this. And Steiner and what he would do if he was me in California today would be quite different to what he did where he is then. And there's some things, and that's another thing with Demeter that I struggle with and I fight with, is like, we've got to evolve this. We're not in Austria. This is different. We got to embrace what we have and where we are and what we need to do, because it's a very different environment.
Right.
That's my opinion. So I've just been told that I got to hurry up a bit. Not a lot, but a bit. So let's move on to Tablas Creek Grenache, if we can.
That one right there.
Maybe we should have another one of these where we talk just about biodynamics. That would be fun.
Probably.
I like doing that. I like talking about that subject. I love it, but I love it for different reasons than most, I think. I love the foundation of it, the whole farm part of it. I'm into it. So Tablas Creek Grenache, we struggled with it for a long time. I couldn't get my head around it. 2006 was the first vintage we made a single varietal one. And I think the best ones have been in the last couple of years, frankly. As you know, there'd be multiple our clones. Everything we do is our own. For the most part, we have one older clone that we planted in '92, but the majority of this will be Tablas Creek A, C, and D. Would have been fermented mostly in wooden uprights with pulse air, cap management, so pretty gentle, keeping a lot of CO2 present. Pressed and aged in neutral wood and hopefully foudre, particularly that once the Grenache is blended, that it would sit in foudre and age there and have no oak influence, because I don't think it needs it. I mean, it's such a beautiful grape without the need for that in this case. Love the tannins. I'm a fan of 18. It's a nice vintage for us, for sure. But I think more interesting is to hear what you guys think about it, because I'm going to say it's great because I was part of making it. Bring them in, Ian. Release them. No, we can't see you, but you can talk.
Oh.
There we go.
I was going to say, this is showing beautifully, Neil, and one of the things I wanted to comment on is the color. You know, we talked about this when you and I did our webinar together a couple weeks ago. You know, Grenache is not necessarily a dark colored wine, and no. I think we have examples here that show just how much there is even without color. You know, I mean, or with a lighter expression of color.
Yeah, and I've struggled with it, and I think that's one of the things that has inspired me by the new wave of Grenache is that people have abandoned the need for it to be dark in color. I mean, I think for the regular, including myself, if you had a Grenache in a black glass, for example, you would have a very different impression because it has such body and such structure, and it's such a powerful wine in its way. Not like it's a big, powerful wine, but it's got a lot to say, and there's a lot of structure, and there's a lot of depth to it, even though it's not the dark. It's not like Syrah dark.
Right.
But to me, it has so much more complexity, and it's such an interesting variety. Yeah, I'm all about it. I'm glad it's Grenache Day.
Yeah, me too. It's also International Cheeseburger Day. So.
Is it? I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's late notice, so I'm going to have to go find a cheeseburger in here.
Yeah.
Jessica, what are your thoughts on the Tablas Creek Grenache? Try and be nice.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. I think when I discussed a little bit when we chatted last about my particular, I'm not, there's a lot of people that make Grenache a lot heavier, and that's just not what inspires me. I look at all of these and I agree with the color and also the weight. Obviously the tannin structure is there, the structure is there, the backbone is there, it's great, but it's not heavy like some Grenache producers. I find I realized it's not that I didn't like Grenache, I just didn't like the way that Californians were making Grenache for quite a while. I really love Priorat, and I think that they were a lot more pretty. And I actually find that this is a very pretty side to Grenache, which I love. There's some feminine qualities to it. It's not all masculine, which sometimes I think Grenache producers can be heavy-handed, and that's why I think that this one is pretty spectacular because it's a nice balance there.
I think that's where I'm coming to in my Grenache search is I like the lighter, prettier, as you said, inside. I'm not sure. I don't like it as a heavy wine. I think it ruins what it should be. I mean, I appreciate people doing that, but I love the lighter, prettier style. I think that's what it does really, really well. And in the interest of time, unfortunately, I'd like another hour here, but we should open the sparkling wine and celebrate Grenache Day, right?
I just opened it.
I haven't opened mine yet. I'll see if I can do it without blowing a hole in the computer. Well, Angela, this is your baby.
I just like to say this wine is really beautiful, Neil. Really beautiful.
Thank you. Continue. Say more. Say more. Talk more about how beautiful it is.
Is there any whole cluster in this?
A little bit. I'm really bad at that stuff. I don't keep like, oh, it's 22%, but there's some, it's a bit random. Like, hey, this looks like this would be good with whole cluster. We should throw some in, and so we do. And then at the blending table is when that comes together. But yeah, and more it used to be traditionally Tablas Creek is no whole cluster, no stems, but we've been playing a little. We don't move fast, but we've been playing with stuff more and more. And I love it. And it's inspiration from people doing new things, new people on the scene, trying new things, and kicks me in the ass to work a little harder. And I like that. It's great. It's great to see the evolution. And Bob, you've seen that for not a lot longer, but a bit longer than me, right? Another couple of decades before me, I'd say.
still evolving.
Well, just when you think you got it figured out, a new guy comes to town and does something that you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I love that.
Always inspirational. That's right.
Yeah, it's great. That's what's fun about this. To me, anyway. Keep evolving. Now I've got my kids who are trying to evolve me, that's a bit annoying. But anyway,
that's your job.
Angela, just talk about this bubbly business.
So this is a Blanc Noise of Grenache. It is from the Santa Barbara Highlands Vineyard. I call it Gracias Madre. It's in honor of my mum. And my mum had asked for many years when I was going to make a tribute to her. I lived in Germany when I was younger, so I called her Mutti. I lived with an East German family, and I brought that tradition home. And my mum asked when I was going to make a tribute to Mutti, which, although I know what it means, it might not translate on a label. So I've named it Gracias Madre. I realized after a few years that if my mum were a wine, she would be sparkling wine, because she absolutely defines that energetically, and she taught me to always have a bottle of bubbles in the fridge. So I actually thought it was going to be a sparkling rosé, but it's ended up completely blanc. We picked it 2 weeks before we picked for rosé at the Highlands, which is the highest elevation Grenache vineyard in California. It grows at 3,200 feet above sea level. And it had definitely started going through veraison, was a little bit, maybe 40-50% turned. I went through primary fermentation in stainless, and then we tirage bottled. It was on tirage 14 months. Then we disgorged this in February 9th.
What is entourage? Explain that.
Oh, so that is when you, so we made it méthode champenoise, or méthode traditionnelle as we call it in New Zealand. So it had gone through primary fermentation, did not see any sulfur. Then we hand bottled 67 cases worth, I want to say 737 bottles. And we added a delicious concoction of a little bit of sugar, a little bit of yeast, some nutrients, and we crown capped it. And then it sat that basically we riddled it slowly over those 14 months until it was crown capped down. And then we froze all of the amazing nutrients and a little bit of sort of sediment, and that came out. We chopped it up and we crown capped it. We put the champagne cage on it, and at that point I realized that it was actually blanc. So during those different processes, it had lost all of its color. It started off a little bit pink and ended up very much white. So it's a sparkling white wine made from a red grape, Grenache Noir, clone to Santa Barbara Highlands vineyard. Was that confusing enough?
Yeah.
I've never had a Blanc de Noirs of Grenache. I've had a few from Pinot Noir, maybe a Pinot Meunier at some point. But when we picked it at 18.2 brix, so it had about 7.5 grams of acid at picking. I would normally never even look at Grenache at that point, because rosé we pick at maybe 20, 20 and a half, 21.
Can you bring them all back in, Ian? I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. Now I'm intrigued. Bob, you ever made any sparkling?
I have not. I just drink sparkling.
Yeah, me too. Really.
Yeah, and I think it's to Angela's comment that you should always have a bottle of sparkling.
I love that.
I think you should have two.
You need to. If you have one, it's always gone.
That's right.
There's never enough sparkling. I just saw that our parent company just released a sparkling under the Miraval label. Did you see that?
I have not.
Fleur de Miraval.
Yeah, no. I've actually been to Miraval. A beautiful, beautiful place.
Miraval?
Yeah, it's near Chateau.
Yeah,
it's near Chateau Routas in Provence.
Oh, it is. All right. Yeah, I visited there last year, and it was ridiculous. Beautiful property.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah. Well, look for that and save your pennies, because it's not cheap.
I'll bet.
And what grape is that?
Jessica, do you do a sparkling or?
A few years ago,
Come closer to the camera
sparkling.
because you break up.
Again,
Move
sorry.
in. Move in.
A few years ago, I wanted to make a sparkling and ended up doing a lot of research, going up to Napa and visiting some sparkling houses up there and kind of questioning around. It's a lot. There's a lot involvement, and hats off to you, Angela. This is absolutely beautiful. It is so it's perfectly, for me, not too dry, but perfectly dry enough that I could crush this whole entire bottle. So it's wonderful.
I agree with you. It seems I'd like to, but it seems like so much. I mean, this woman has 3 children and an English husband. I don't know how she has time to do this business. It is intense for sure. What was that, Angela?
No, just this was really fun. I think Grenache, back to what we were talking about earlier, there's so many different expressions that you can work with or work towards or dream of. And this was something I had no idea how it would be because I had no benchmark. I didn't know if, to me, Grenache is a beautifully aromatic, highly feminine, definitely world-changing wine. At least it was in my personal experience. And I didn't know if that translated to sparkling. And I think every little bottle is like its own universe. And making wines as I do, which is very hands-on, everything's foot-tread by me, with sacred music playing and the burning heart of passion and the 28 candles. Sparkling wine, it goes in a bottle and you just sort of leave it. So as a mum, that was a really interesting experience for me, just to have faith and know it would be delicious, like I dreamed it would be, and it's fun. I enjoyed it. So thank you for letting us one of the wines tonight.
Do you have great patience? Because that's my problem with stuff like sparkling wine, is not being able to stop opening bottles to see what it's doing in there.
I try to. My dad had great patience, and I try to emulate that. I think we could always have more patience, but this teaches patience, like children.
I have none. Now my kids are doing, as I said, doing the carbonic thing, and I keep wanting to open it and look at it, and they won't let me, and I hate it. It's like, I want to see what's happening in there.
Yeah. Keep it close.
Well, I'd like to have another conversation at some point with biodynamics. Now that's intriguing me. The other thing that's strange is we didn't have a rosé tonight, which, I mean, Grenache makes a beautiful rosé, perhaps the greatest of rosés.
My wife, Louisa, makes a Grenache rosé from the Ampelos vineyard, which is another biodynamic vineyard in this area. And we had some of that with lunch today. So yeah, it was perfect.
I saw that on your table next to the multiple bottles of Rias. How is the Ampelos vineyard? I've been offered some fruit from there. I'm interested.
It's a beautiful vineyard. Yeah, really in the Santa Rita Hills, really well farmed. Yeah, beautiful.
It's the Work family, right?
Yeah, Peter and Rebecca, I work with some of their Pinot Noir as well. They're certified biodynamic. Awesome family.
Yeah, so maybe I should make a foray in Santa Barbara.
You should for sure.
Excuse me, I'm being summoned. What? Here's an interesting thing. We have to continue for 10 more minutes. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So let's talk more about Grenache. So what about a Grenache Blanc? What about a Grenache Blanc? Blanc de Blanc. That intrigues me. No takers?
I'm going to leave that up to Angela to make.
Yeah, okay, Angela. You're in charge of the biodynamic Blanc de Blanc. We've lost Angela's. I can't hear Angela. You're muted. Jessica, jump in.
Hi.
Hi.
I'll leave the Blanc de Blanc.
Let's spend some time talking. You're going to have to come closer because we lose you when you get further away. Let's talk about your new tasting room situation, because I think that's important, that we have to use this moment to let people know where you now are, because they're going to go to your old place and find cider, which is not what they're looking for.
Yeah, so we had to move during this pandemic, which was not exciting, but it was bittersweet, and now it's just so sweet. We love our neighbors, and we have some fantastic friends over here on the east side. So we're now on the east side of Los Olivos, and just kind of rocking and rolling. Have a great outdoor space and doing the best we can during this pandemic. So
How much is it, like by appointment only situation, like we are up here?
Yeah, everything's outdoors. I mean, we do welcome walk-ups. We do recommend reservations just because we're so busy now on the weekends. Weekdays are a little bit more easy to get in because not a lot of travelers, kids are back in school and things like that. But reservations are definitely recommended. But yeah, it's I can't complain with the new space. It's pretty rad.
Yeah, I was there before our last conversation, and you were just in the middle of construction and just about to open, and it's a cool space though.
Thank you so much.
And Bob, let's talk about your spot. We need to let people know where they can find these wines. And
it's in the village of Arroyo Grande, which is about 15 miles south of San Luis Obispo, and about a little less than an hour north of Los Olivos. In this little area of Arroyo Grande that they call the village, and same thing. We have outside tasting. That's the only thing we can offer right now is outside tasting, which is fine as long as the weather continues to be fine. We're fine with it.
Yeah, winter's gonna bring new challenges for all of us.
That's right.
Angela, you're muted. Have you muted yourself?
And I can tell you about Angela's tasting room.
There you go.
Are you on, Angela? Angela's tasting room is in the incredible, wonderful town of Los Alamos, California, which is also graced by some incredible chefs' culinary experiences. Her tasting room is so awesome. And correct me, you can either just do like a thumbs up if I'm right. Your husband built a lot of your tasting room, right? Yeah, I mean, super talented dude. Obviously, I think wonderful husband as well, but awesome woodworker. The place is beautiful. And I think it's open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yes. No, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
We're playing charades now.
And you can taste some of the best Grenaches on the planet. And what I love about Angela is like you actually get that vineyard experience, which is kind of near and dear to my heart, to be able to taste Grenache site to site, which is so rad. And just one more thing, the best we just mentioned, we didn't taste a Grenache, a rosé of Grenache, but probably I would say one of the top Grenache rosés in all of the United States is made by Angela Osborne. So if anybody out there has not tasted it, you're missing out, and you have got to get on that because it's absolutely perfect. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
I think it might have been a good thing you were muted because you just got a great sales pitch from Jessica. But you didn't say anything like that about me, Bob, but whatever. So Tablas Creek, I mean, I assume a lot of people know where we are up in Paso Robles. Same thing by appointment. We have a pretty extensive outside patio area, which we're enjoying serving people on. The tasting crew are fantastic out there and doing a great job in these difficult times. So come and enjoy that. I have one question here, which is kind of a good one to end on. It's like, Neil, can you explain, and I think we can all chime in on this a little bit. Can you explain the difference between Tablas Creek and Chateau de Beaucastel Grenache? And is it the treatment, and I think it's fairly much an unanswerable question in many ways, but the difference is they're made in completely different places. You know, the goal of Tablas Creek was to bring the same clones and winemaking techniques and farming philosophies, et cetera, to a very specific site in California and make wines of the same style, not try and make the same wine. And we'll never emulate Beaucastel. Their vines are ancient. They're in a very different zone. Their terroir is different. And I think every one of the people involved in this conversation respects terroir above perhaps everything else, you know. And so that's the constant question: is, are you trying to be like Folkestone? No, we're never trying to be like Folkestone. We're trying to show how important terroir is. So our farming and the organics and the biodynamics and the native yeast and native mallows are all similar to what they do, and the no new oak, et cetera, but we're in California. And yes, historically the soils were laid at a similar time, but it's a very different zone. And what we do see, however, or I see, I can only speak for myself, is in the more recent vintages of Tablas Creek, there's a very familial thread to the wines of Folkestone. If you taste them side to side these days, if you did it blind, you wouldn't know that they were from a different country or continent. You would think they were. You can tell there's a family feel to it, which is pretty cool. And I didn't. This isn't my idea. This wasn't my dream or goal. This is something I've just been involved with for a while, and I think that's cool to see. And there were times in the early days when I was not embarrassed to do it, but I'm not going to pour this next to that. I mean, it's not unfair, but now I think we hold our own. We're off their coattails and on our own path, which I think is the ultimate dream for them. Bob?
I agree with that. No, you have done something really wonderful in a completely related but different way than it's been really cool.
Sounds out of control. Ian, can we get Angela's team back? Can we hear Angela again? There you are. You're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can. Hey, tell us how great Jessica's tasting room is, maybe.
You did such a beautiful job of describing our space. And I can't wait to see you on your space on the east side of there.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up and cheers for Grenache Day with some beautiful sparkling wine. And thank you so much, three of you, for tolerating this again. I appreciate it. I look forward to a biodynamic conversation. I think that could get argumentative, which would be fun.
Yeah, I love it.
Cheers. We'll go.